G'day everybody, it's Mike from Battlefield Accessories here. Bit of an early Christmas present for 2023. Normally, as you know, we make new products and stuff and release them on Christmas Day. We've got a new prototype product and we're really after a bit of feedback. We're loosely calling a working title Campaign-O-Matic. So what this is it's a flexible hex board, right, with Perspex overlays that sit over the top. So this is kind of a loosely fantasy themed one. And this is my personal favorite. This one, right, which is using artwork drawn from 1770 cartographers, right, and so the idea is it's flexible hexes so you can move them around, Perspex sheet, so I've drawn the roads over the top of it. Then I can do things like I can grab side A's moves and basically sit those over the top. So if I'm an umpire, right, running a campaign, there's, you know, hidden map movement kind of stuff going on, right? And then I can grab side B's, and so I get that sort of stuff, so I can see where there's an encounter. So if you stick around and watch the video, you'll see me put it together and have a bit of a play with it using chalk markers, which basically rub off the Perspex. Super keen for feedback. You know, different styles of maps, whatever you like. You know, feel free to comment below. See ya. So the plan is that the Campaign-O-Matic will come with a series of pieces. So it'll have a baseboard, a surround, which will be full of double-sided hexes, right? A Perspex cover sheet, which basically sits on the top to lock your campaign map in, and then some California screws which secure the whole thing together. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build one. And so I've got all of my tiles here. Right, and if you look at this particular style, these ones are full of 18th century map icons. So it gives you a really good period feel. So what I'm going to do is going to dump them over to the side. I'm just basically going to show you the process of building a map. And then I'm just going to take my California screw and I'm just going to push it through the top surface. Now, later on I'm going to remove these when I go to put the cover slip on, but at the moment what that's doing is it's just keeping the whole thing secured and anchored together. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tiles, so all the tiles are double-sided, and they do have a kind of correct orientation. So for example, you could have your city this way, you could have the city next door upside down if you wanted to, but they do kind of have an orientation. And so they've got different things on either side, some of them have got blanks on them. So I'm just going to build a random map. Of course, if I was working on a campaign, I had something in mind, then I would build that. But in this case here, I'm just going to build a random map just by putting hexes in. Okay, so I've built my map. I'm happy with the layout. Of course, I can switch some tiles around, and you might have seen when in the fast forward when they're actually reasonably tight. And what I'm doing is I'm just basically pulling two hexes up and pushing them down against each other to keep that nice and solid. Last thing I'm going to do is pull out my California screws. I'm going to take my overlay sheet. Of course, I'm about to put this onto my map, and I'm probably not going to move it for a little while because I'm running a campaign, and so I'm just going to give it a quick wipe down before I put it in, and then I'm going to push my screws back in all the way through. Then carefully lift the whole thing up and put the backing screw in. So basically, just so as you can see, I'm just winding those screws into the back. Now I'm only doing them hand tight because you want to be able to take them off again later when you're wanting to reset your map. Right, so there you have it, and you can see I can flap that around and it's not moving at all. Right, so there I have my completed campaign map. Now in terms of actual detail on your map, we're using these uni chalk markers. You could use whiteboard pens on the Perspex and that would work okay. The issue we found with whiteboard pens is the intensity of the colours not so great. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these chalk markers, give it a good shake. If you haven't seen one of these things before, they're basically like liquid paint. The advantage of them is though that they wash off in water. You do have to give it a tiny little bit of a scrub to get to break the surface, but once it's going to come off very quickly or very easily. In actual fact, this one you're looking at here is one that I just washed about half an hour ago. Okay, so I'm looking at my map here, thinking about where my roads network's going to run. So from this major town here, I'm going to run a road up through this village. It will then go through the woods here, skirt the mountains, then arrive at that place there. From this village here, I might make a little road that goes through the mountains and joins in here. Then from this town, through the woods, up to this city. Now just to illustrate how the chalk pen works, so you can see if you look here, I've drawn that line a little bit further than I needed to, so I'm just going to run a little bit of water on a cotton swab over it. Right, and she's gone. Now you could also do things, if you wanted to name places, then you could come along, you know, for example, I've got a white one of these chalk pens, I could start putting place names, right? Or I could use a whiteboard pen or a non-permanent marker on here and add place names in. All those things that you add into your campaign or into your map are going to increase the immersion that people are experiencing when they're actually joining in it. Okay, so there's my campaign map with its roads that are now dry. This for me is the real strength of this system. Within your set, we're envisaging that we're going to market it with 2 overlay pieces. And the overlay pieces are just blank pieces of Perspex that sit over the top of the California screws, so they're locked in place. And so if you like, and I'm going to model this in a second, these 2 pieces are side A and side B. Now in our set, I'm going to use red and green markers to represent the movement of my armies. So let's say it's turn 1, right, and side A in red starts here, right, and it can move say 2 squares, and so it's going to move along the road and end itself in that forest there. Right, so that might be my move. So as the umpire, or as the person playing the campaign, I'm going to grab side A's moves, I'm going to put them over to one side. Probably going to hide them from side B, because side B's then going to come along and it's their turn. They're going to grab their green marker, and of course they're starting with their force over here. And they're going to make their 2 moves, and they're going to head off for this monastery. Now as an umpire, I can come along And I can drop these, I'm just not going to drop them down because they're both wet, but I can drop these two maps on top of each other and I can see whether there's any likely engagements about to occur between those two sides. So it's kind of like hidden map movement, but done very easily and effectively. Now let's say it's my second turn and I decide that, well, this force is going to split into two forces. So one of the forces is going to head up towards this city, moving its 2 squares. The other one is going to push off into this square here. Now, of course, I can write things on here, so I can write this turn 1, right, force A and force B. Of course, I'll have them there, and of course, this is turn 2, turn 2. So I can add all sorts of details onto here with a view that after a while, so for example, in 3 turns time, I can erase this turn 1, or alternatively, I can leave that in place because when side B crosses over a path that side A has been following, maybe as the umpire you're going to give them a little bit more information. So I can basically put as much as I want on that sheet. So side B comes along, and we're going to note down this was turn 1. It's going to keep its force together and it's going to head in towards, it's going to move there and then here. And that's turn 2. Now I can have a look at my map now. And as the umpire, depending on the rules I'm using, I can say, well, when 2 forces are in adjacent squares, they become aware of each other's presence, right? And so I can actually now say, or inform my players, okay, there's a potential encounter in this square, or this hexagon here. Now, with the terrain that I've got here, I'm getting a little bit of an idea about what sort of features I might set up on my battlefield. So, that's it, Campaign-O-Matic. This is our, we're going to call it historical style. And I really like the effect that you got a kind of parchment-y style map, right, with period artwork. Our alternative is a map that we're calling more fantasy style. And again, the same deal with this one. I've already constructed this map using the tiles. The tiles are all double-sided. And then I've got my pen. I can come along and go, oh, I'm going to draw some roads on this one too. So I'm going to start here. We've got some little hamlet, run off to the fort. From the fort, I'm going to run off to this village. From the village, up to this city. And from the fort, through the woods. Now I could also, with the blue, I could put a river on. And so let's say that we have a river that runs, there's a good spot for a river. Let's say it starts here in the hills, runs down, through the forest and off the edge of the board.